Hello everybody, Paul here with Left-Handed Knife Reviews. Today we're going to be taking a look at the CJRB Maileah, model number J1918-BKF. Let's get right into it. First up, we're going to have our facts and figures. This is going to be a 2.375 inch blade in AR-RP M9 steel running on a set of washers. This handle is made out of G10 and measures in at 3.3125 inches. At the time of this review, this knife sells for $34.95 on Blade HQ. I'm going to put some items on the table for size comparison, as you will see the actual dimensions of the knife appear on the screen. First up, we have our standard Dixon Ticonderoga pencil unsharpened. I'm going to follow that up with the Spyderco Dragonfly Salt. I'll do one more small knife with the Cold Steel Tough Light. And last up, another CJRB option, the small feldspar. All right, next up, let's talk about Larry and my experience while using the knife. The Maileah is a snappy knife to use. The texture on the G10 is good, which is great because there's not a whole lot of room for you to hold on to the knife. There are two ways to deploy the knife, both with a front flipper and a thumb stud. The knife deploys well for some and locks up consistently. All right, let's move on to what the Maileah succeeds at. When you're a small knife, you don't have a whole lot of knife to make an impact. The Maileah makes an impact pretty well with its small package. The AR RPM9 steel held up well for us, and the small Wharncliffe blade is one of the better small blades that we have dealt with. Wharncliffes are normally really good at EDC tasks, and this one was no exception. Next up, let's take a look at some of the struggles we had with this knife. For a small knife, the ergos were rough. The space between the finger slot and the back of the knife is very small, making hold the knife with a normal 3-finger grip uncomfortable. The way we found best to hold this knife was like a chef's knife, but with this you lose your thumb on the spine of the knife and any additional downward force, making this a good knife for light use. But the second you need to apply some force, the usefulness of this knife drops really quickly. Next up, we have our points of note. Points of note are neutral things we want to mention, but fall in the gray area between successes and struggles. The pocket clip on this knife is a deep carry pocket clip. There is not a lanyard hole present, but there is a little post along the back to tie one to. A couple nice little red accents, kind of around the thumb stud and around the pivot screw, which were nice little touches. The deploy on this knife is also something that I enjoyed, but my dad really struggled with. The small knife combined with his limited motor movement in his hands led to him struggling to open the knife. He has been able to do other front flippers, the X-Arc by Civivi, with success. So it was something with this knife and his issues with a limited amount of motor movement in his hands that he struggled with opening this knife. Now for everything that's left. The part of the knife review, we talk about everything left-handed. So for this knife, you have a pocket clip that is reversible. You also have two different deployment methods. You have your thumb stud. Cutout's going to be quite a bit different for a right-handed individual than a left-handed individual. They do a nice little kind of ramp here for a lefty, which is nice. So it is able to deploy fairly easily with a thumb stud. As far as the front flipper goes, pops right open and is going to give an identical experience for both left and right-handed individuals. Overall, this knife is fairly left-handed friendly. The one spot that I do not like this knife for left-handed individuals is when it comes to this liner lock. On the smaller knife and the way you have to hold it, getting this liner lock over is much more difficult. I do not know what it was that really pushed it over the edge for me, but it's smooth with no texturing along this spot. Also, it's not as far, you don't have as long of a liner, so it might be that it's just requiring a little bit extra force to get it over. But those two things are something that I struggled with. I can still do it one-handed, but there's a noticeable amount of struggle when it comes to that. All right, let's talk about our final thoughts and recap. Overall, this knife functions okay for the price. At $35, you get a knife in a decent steel with a pretty good blade. This knife also deploys well for some, and for me it is fun to deploy, mainly due to its size and its snappy action. This knife is something I would consider a backup knife, but in a lot of aspects that I definitely look for in an EDC, this knife really falls short. Overall, the amount you're spending on this knife, I believe it is worth it if you're looking for something in this size with this set of functions. But if you're looking for something that's going to handle a larger range of tasks, this is definitely something that I would steer away from because you are going to come up short. Thank you very much for joining me today. Be sure to subscribe for more great knife content. We'll see you next time.